everybody, and welcome to the latest episode of Let's Talk Astrology with Kepler College teachers. Today, we are delighted to introduce Dorothy Oja. Dorothy is an esteemed astrologer, author, lecturer, and writer with a career spanning over 40 years. So thank you so much, Dorothy, for joining us today, and how are you doing?
Thank you, Callum. I'm very happy to be here and to talk to Kepler students and anyone who's interested in what Kepler offers. So many things.
Wonderful, fantastic. So the topic we're going to talk about today is obviously the very contentious war in Ukraine, and I think it's been on the minds of a lot of people, including myself. So on April 30th, you'll be teaching a workshop titled Ukraine and the Solar Eclipse. So for any prospective students out there and anyone who might want to join, could you just speak more to that particular workshop on Saturday?
Yes. Well, yes, of course, it's on everyone's mind. I consider it, we're in a major spiritual crisis on this planet, major. So this workshop is very dense in terms of lots of charts, even progressions for for those charts that I can use, for which I have time. So we're going to be looking at the start of the war, which is always the important or the key, as we know in astrology, the beginning of anything. So that we'll start with that, but we're also going to look at, could we have seen this happening in advance? And one of the ways to do that would be to look at the solstice, the winter solstice, which shows us the conditions for the first quarter of 2022. So we're going to look at that to see in hindsight whether we can determine something like this could have happened. Of course, nobody wishes to see that a war of this magnitude, in any chart. But could we have seen something of this sort in the social economic world? And we're going to go on with that after we discuss the natal chart of the invasion. We're also going to look at the equinox chart. And then we're going to look at the summer solstice chart as well. We're going to see whether we can determine how long this is going to last, whether we can actually find some indicators of something like that. Now, this is something new that I'm doing with the equinox and solstice charts. So it is going to be an interesting research and study. We're also, of course, going to use all the key players. So we're going to use the chart of Putin, the one that we have, the one that's commonly used. We can't be absolutely sure, but it's commonly used. We do have Vladimir Zelensky's chart. We do have an accurate birth time. We're going to use Biden's chart, the USA chart, and we're going to use progressions. And also, of course, we'll bring in the solar eclipse, since the workshop is happening on the day of our first eclipse of 2022. So we'll bring that in and we'll show how it ties in and whether it is relevant in these charts. I do believe it is, but we'll look at how and why, and again, potential effects from the eclipses. All of them, not just this one.
Fascinating. And it seems like a really comprehensive look of all these different charts. So from the start of the war to the individual presidents in different, all the major playing countries. And it sounds like it's going to be a really interesting deep dive into, as you say, were there any indications for the war beginning and how long, is this going to be a protracted war through months or through years, and then take a deeper dive into that. Fascinating.
That's right.
And I believe you have a chart example you'd like to share with us today.
Yes. So this is the chart of the invasion, the beginning. So there are many interesting things, of course, about this chart. Well, so the first thing is it's a one Virgo rising. So the chart ruler is Mercury. And when we look at where Mercury is, it's at 10 Aquarius, which happens to be Mercury having returned to the place where it went retrograde in January. So that is a very, of course, key point in time in the cycle of Mercury retrograde when it returns to the point where it originally went retrograde. So, and of course, Mercury in modern astrology is also exalted in Aquarius. So this makes this Mercury very strong. It's also moving towards Saturn, and it's in the sixth house. And the sixth house traditionally in mundane astrology rules the armies, or the people who are doing the major work of the so-called war. So all of that, is a first indicator of I would say the determination. But there's more than that. Of course, the international nature of it in the sign Aquarius. So that's just a little piece, and then we can go further and we can see that we have Mars is exalted as well in Capricorn, which is the action. Mars is always the action, and it's exactly conjunct Venus. So that again indicates I would say the premeditation and the strength of the impact, I would say. Now, then I would also look at the moon and, what the moon is doing. And the moon actually is in Sagittarius, and it will square Neptune and then make a semi-sextile to Pluto as it leaves. The square to Neptune, I think, is the most powerful, and to me would indicate the that this was an ill-advised action. Because typically a square with Jupiter involved, moon in Sagittarius is ruled by Jupiter, and it's also square Jupiter. It's coming away from a square to Jupiter, but moving towards a square to Neptune. So typically I consider that to be an action that is unwise, let's put it that way, whereas Jupiter would be wise, but a square to Jupiter or a square to Jupiter ruled planets, and especially Neptune, would be unwise or not working as well as you would want it to. But we can see so much on this chart. I mean, the moon square Neptune also talks to the dispersion aspect that is seen here. This would indicate all of the refugees, the dramatic influx of refugees is 5 million now. So we can see all of these indicators in this, and we can look at them separately and then, gather a picture. But definitely that moon in Sagittarius is a sense of feeling powerful or taking a risk that doesn't work out quite as you anticipate with those squares. So I again, if an astrologer were to draw up a chart of an invasion, I wouldn't think they would draw up this kind of a chart.
I was about to say to you, I don't think the Kremlin used an astrologer or a decent one to plan this invasion ahead. So,
unfortunately, yes. Yeah. So these are some, very key. You can see where the powerful planets are, and you can also see that the aggressor would be first house and Mercury, and the Ukraine would be the seventh house. So Ukraine has some help here with the sun and Jupiter. Jupiter in its own sign, Jupiter in domicile, is also very strong. So there has been a tremendous amount of help that has come to Ukraine. So that's the positive there in the seventh house that we can see.
And we're just going to look at another quick one. So we're going to pull up Putin's chart. So this is just a quick snapshot of Putin's chart. And as you said before, it does have a DD Rodden rating. So, the timing we're not too sure of, but if you do, I don't know if anyone's done rectifications on this, but looking at, past events, I feel, I don't know about you personally, but it feels like this could be fairly accurate. What do you think, Dorothy, to this one?
Yes, I do. I think it's fairly accurate. Yes. We can't be absolutely sure, but this is it seems to fit the profile of the person pretty well. Yeah.
I think, yeah, I'm in full agreement, I think. And yeah, I apologize for everyone. I've got a few scribbles on here. I thought I removed them, which I didn't. So, so I was wondering, with your, your expertise in this, I wonder if you can just speak to a few things about Putin's chart.
Sure, sure. Well, the first thing, of course, he's a Libra. He's a Sun, Saturn, Neptune, Mercury Libra. We know that we have to look at the ruler of Libra in order to understand his Libra archetype a little bit better. So he has Venus in Scorpio, which makes for a very different kind of Libra, with Venus in detriment there. So, and just the Scorpio rising there as well. We know he's a very intelligent man, Moon in Gemini, but there's that strategy of the Venus and Scorpio and the drive for power with the Venus opposite Jupiter in Taurus. And we could say obsessiveness is certainly a quality that he could have, and I think he does. I think he is fairly one-dimensional in terms of what his goal is. His goal is to make Russia, to make Russia a greater power. But I think that kind of has backfired on him with this. I don't think he expected this. It was a foolish, it wasn't well thought out. And the prevailing wisdom, in the international community is that he has been very isolated, especially in the last few years, and very phobic about COVID, and only having a few key advisors around him, which certainly fits the 12th house here. It's
a great point, and it's interesting. I find politicians in general, so whether that's Putin, I know Biden has a lot of 12th house issues going on. I think Margaret Thatcher, a bit of George Bush, so that, the behind the scenes, they're pulling the strings. And if this is indeed correct, you have that KGB behind the scenes, espionage, those kind of themes. Really, that's why I think this one is fairly accurate as a chart.
Yes, and all of the suspicion that tends to go on with Scorpio or Venus and Scorpio and 12th house energies, the suspicion, which kind of fuels his ambitions and so forth. He does have Pluto in the 10th house, conjunct the South Node. So, power and control certainly are part of that archetype as well. And, land, Jupiter, the ruler of his Mars, is in Taurus. So land and, having that increasing the empire again, I think has always been his intention. And Jupiter square Pluto as well comes in, so it's really a kind of a loose T-square here, and it comes out in Aquarius, where Saturn has been on his North Node, and he chose to activate that T-square at that time with Saturn on the North Node.
Absolutely, yeah, and again, I mean, I think one of his theses was we talked about the worst thing ever happening to Russia was the collapse of the Soviet Union, and didn't even talk about the Second World War and things like that. So that idealism, I think, as you alluding to, comes into play. You've got that that Mercury Neptune in there, so maybe the skill sense, he's been very good at propagandizing his domestic audience, or using media effectively, I guess, against his own population. But do you think that maybe at this stage, maybe playing into some, you've talked about isolation, so is maybe a possibility of self-delusion with some, I know it's separating from Neptune, but maybe some of those aspects there?
Yes, I definitely think so, because normally Putin is basically, I would call him a chess player. He's always trying to be a few steps ahead, and he's very premeditated in whatever he does. And when this first happened, I thought to myself, this is really out of character for this person, for this man, because it seemed like such a foolish thing to do. And, so it goes back to, Mars and Sagittarius, which certainly can be foolish. It can feel, have delusions of grandeur at times, right?
Yeah.
It can feel as though it can do anything. It's willing to risk. It's a fire Mars, but it didn't work. It didn't work. It was ill-conceived, and then we can see so much in this chart. We can see the 4 planets in Libra. He wanted to somehow restore a balance, that he felt something was terribly out of balance, and he wanted to restore a balance. But again, it still is curious to me as to why he would choose this time period and why he would choose this action. It seemed really out of character for him, because he typically is very premeditated in what he does. And so that's why I think something must have happened in the last couple of years. And other people have talked about that, that he got too isolated, and his vision, his ideas were very narrow, and he didn't get the whole picture.
That's an excellent point, and fascinating insights. And I think you're right, premeditation. So what it was, 2014, you had the annexation of Crimea. So, like I said, the premeditation, is, unfortunately, we're not dealing with an idiot. We're dealing with quite, I think, an intelligent, like you said, it's maybe someone who seriously thinks things through before enacting. But as you'll say, maybe in the last few years, I know this is speculation, but maybe people have said, COVID or the isolation. I think these dictators get to a point like Hitler did, where, people aren't feeding the correct information, because they end up getting, in Russia, it'll be the gulags. For Hitler, it was like, if you're not giving, the generals weren't giving, the right information, saying, oh, everything's going well. Then, they start to believe their own, delusions or their own hype or their own decisions. But I think what you're saying, I love your bit about bringing balance, maybe in his mind, restoring the pride of Russia, whatever, delusions he's got going in his mind. But no, thank you. These are fantastic insights, and I can't wait for this, your full talk on Saturday.
Yes, it will be fun. And it is dense, because we are going to be looking at a lot of charts. So I hope people will be interested in looking at these various charts. It's definitely a dense workshop in terms of lots of astrological analysis. So, but I, of course, always welcome comments also. I don't expect to to talk nonstop for 2 hours, but I will invite people to make comments or ask questions, certainly.
Wonderful. So, and I feel these topics are so important. And again, because it's on the top of everyone's mind, I know there's a few people who don't like to delve into, elections or politics or contentious issues, but I feel this is such an important topic that I think it's wonderful that you're putting all this together and using your expertise and your experience to delineate a lot of these charts, which I think is wonderful.
It is a favorite thing to do, even though it's difficult to hear about all of this news. I still feel that I have to be informed about it, even though it's difficult to watch what's going on. We can't stick our heads in the sand. We have to be aware and alert. And certainly astrology is a wonderful map for us to use to understand what's going on in the world, and what the underlying or the deeper spiritual issues might be, what's going on this planet here, and what has been going on since 2020.
Really. It's these last few years, what with the pandemic and the threat of nuclear war, and I'm like, can we have a break, please? Can we get into better times? But as you're saying, astrology is such a wonderful tool, whether it's your individual life or a collective sense of what's going on. And for me, I don't know what I'd do without astrology. I think I'd be in panic mode most of the day.
It's an amazing map. I just can't believe that everyone can't see the value of it. I mean, I've devoted my life to it, and so many others have as well. And it's such a gift to have that perspective. Amazing. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights today. And again, to reiterate, so everyone can find the description below this video. We'll put a link to the workshop again, which will be on Saturday from 10 till 1 p.m. Pacific. And so you guys can jump in there, click on there and register. But again, we'll keep that workshop up on the website to view at any time. So everyone doesn't have to attend live. But if you want to ask questions live, I would definitely recommend being there on Saturday, which would be fantastic to watch. So thank you so much, Dorothy. And you also, you've got any more classes coming up soon? Any other workshops after this, or any other projects?
Yes, well, I teach a 5-week relationship course for Kepler, and that's part 1. And then part 2, I'm working on getting that one ready, and that will be mainly on the composite and the Davison charts. So
wonderful.
But that's not ready yet for Kepler. I've taught it for many, many, many years, but it will be new for Kepler. I'll be teaching that. So
fascinating.
Probably next year, early next year. So
fascinating. Well, I'd love you to come back on the show, and maybe we can talk about the relationship class as well. That'd be fantastic.
Sure, I'd be delighted. Thank you, Callum. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And lastly, do you have a website that people can visit if they want to learn more about you or some of the books that you've written?
Yes. My website is getting refurbished, but I have a blog on Facebook. It's Dorothy Oja Astrology. I write a daily blog there, so people can reach me there.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, again, thank you so much, Dorothy, for joining us today. And again, it's such a fascinating and obviously, terrible topic to talk about and what's going on right now in the world, but a fascinating one nonetheless to see what might come ahead. So thank you so much for joining us today.
You're so welcome. Thank you, Callum.
Thank you.